Hello and welcome to The Interviewer. I'm Jack Sheeran. In this video, I'm joined by Sir Steve Smith, the Vice Chancellor of the University of Exeter, an individual who many regard to be a visionary within higher education. As someone who was told that people like you just don't go to university, Sir Steve Smith has gone on to attain a Bachelor of Science, a Masters of Science and a PhD, before being awarded 4 honorary degrees and being knighted in 2011 for his services to higher education, both locally and nationally. But in this interview, we discuss the issues of Brexit, the ratio of male to female students, the value of degrees, and the increase in sexual harassments on university campuses. Well, thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure.
We're going to start off talking about Brexit. What do you think the main impact has been on higher education because of Brexit?
I think the major issue has really been almost a cultural one. I mean, we haven't seen any big financial or research grant or student number changes yet. It's too early. I think there's been a kind of loss of optimism. At Exeter, a lot of the staff felt very upset. This wasn't a country they recognised. And we held a whole series of meetings. 1 in 4 staff came to those meetings, 1,100 staff in the first few days after the vote. People just felt, a lot of our EU staff felt unwanted. Was this the place for them? So the first phase was kind of upset. And then we've gone into a phase of what does it mean for our student numbers, for our research funding, for our ability to recruit staff. But there's no doubt that it was a shock to the sector. You know, the data showed 90% of university staff voted to remain.
Sure.
So they weren't expecting it. So in a way, we're coming through that and we're now working out where it's going.
But emotions aside, do you think on a day-to-day running of the university it's going to make any difference, this university or universities across the country?
2 headlines. So the UK gets just under £1 billion a year in research funding from the EU. Leave campaign said, oh, don't worry, we'll replace it. That's not going to happen. So there's a financial issue. The second issue is students. We get 125,000 students a year in the UK from the EU. Well, they're not going to go up in number. And there's a lot of uncertainty, especially for 2017 joiners, because they would not get UK student fee status for the 3 years if we exited in the middle. And then there's a lot of issues about staff, so it will have an effect. The difficulty is working out quite how much.
Don't you think that perhaps universities could be looking towards private investors and private companies to get that funding instead? It's not all doom and gloom?
In theory, you're absolutely right. There are other sources. Those other sources have not historically been terribly willing to fund universities.
Let's move on to the next topic,
Sure.
which is the ratio between male and female students
Yep.
within higher education. Do you think there is a gender imbalance within UK universities? Are there more male or female students?
So there is a gender imbalance, and it's basically that women are far more likely to go to university than men now. No one, of course, commented for several centuries when it was the other way around. So you have to pause a little bit that it's now seen as an issue. But what is absolutely clear is, to give you the headlines, women are now more likely as a percentage to be accepted to university than men are to apply. Women at 18 get the same percentage of them get A-levels as boys get GCSEs. So the gap is enormous.
Do you think, in a way, it isn't just down to whether they're male or female or their financial background, but it's actually down to the teacher themselves? For example, OECD, which is a French think tank, they found that boys did much better in anonymous tests than in teacher assessments, where the teacher was aware of who did that test.
Yeah.
So do you think, in a way, that it's down actually to the teacher and their impact upon the student and the
There's a lot
male
of
students?
That's a good question. There's a lot of American literature on how boys and girls at university get marked. And one of the things you find is girls are, when they know the gender of the person and when it's non-anonymised, girls tend to perform in a narrower band than boys. Boys tend to get the highest and the lowest, whereas girls are seen as, nice and sensible, so they're in a range. When you anonymise higher education results, girls improve and boys then move away from being either alpha or A or C. They move inwards. So there are certainly implicit kind of assumptions and preferences and predilections.
But let's move on to the value of degrees.
Yep.
This is something which many graduates will find very important because the value of their degree that they leave university after the 3-4 year course is going to determine whether they get a job or not afterwards. Do you think we should reduce the number of universities within the UK?
No.
Why not?
Because my own view is, I think they should specialise more. I think they should, not everyone should want to do the same thing. So it's a big question. So I'll try and put it in one very simple image. What really matters is the value they add.
But do you think universities should just sit down and review their methods of assessment, for example? Students are expected to fulfil coursework, exams, that there will never be a place or time or event within the workplace. If I go and get a job, I'll never be put into a room with no resources, where I can't talk to anyone, where I have to do a piece of work within an hour, and then leave and then wait months before I get a result. That will never happen within the workplace. So what skill is that providing me with?
I was of the time when we moved away from exams, moved towards more continual assessment. That did test some skills, but exams tested something else. And your example, you're absolutely right. You will be able to talk to people, but there will be many times in career where you're told, go and do this. And it's that ability to work, to learn, to adapt on your own, that a variety, and I accept it's a variety, of coursework and exams prepares you for.
What benefit does honorary degrees bring to any university across the country?
They bring a lot of benefit. We try and get about 10 to 12 a year, and we try for a balance on gender, on academic area, on ethnicity, on all sorts of things. But the core reason is, do they either exemplify something we're good at? Do they have a link with the region? So if there's someone who was born here, gone on to do things, or did they study here? Really important. And a couple of people we offered honorary degrees to this year, in their speeches said, when I graduated 35 years, whatever. And the other thing is, how will they assist the university by opening doors and providing opportunities for our graduates? So we give honorary degrees to people, and they come back and do work for the students. So for us, it's a very business decision. It's how do we offer something which then brings someone closer to us, and then what we find is they engage with the institution. They offer, internships for our students, or they come down and do guest lectures. And it's you're known by the company you keep. And for us, the quality of our honorary graduates is a very serious issue for the institution.
How do you think universities can tackle the issue of sexual harassment on campus?
So first thing to say is it's extremely serious, and we here work constantly with the Guild on it. It goes through so many dimensions. So I get reports of every single issue that's reported, and we discuss with the Guild and with the security team. I tend to be driven around the campus a lot by the security team for different reasons, to different meetings, and they always talk to me about any issue. Touch wood, thankfully, there are few reported incidents on campus.
Right.
The problem isn't so much campus, it's town, and as you know, it's the walk back at night.
So do you think in a way that sexual harassment has almost become so commonplace that people just fail to notice it anymore?
No, interesting. I tend to think the opposite, actually.
Right.
I think when I was at university, female students put up with an awful lot, and if they complained, they didn't have a sense of humour, or there was something odd about them. Now I think, well, what is healthy is the extent to which it's called. I mean, I do think that. I mean, you cannot spend a night on Yik Yak and not pick up if someone's had a bad treatment, and the support network on there is really genuinely impressive.
But you do refer to women quite a lot.
Yeah.
Don't you think men can face it too?
Yes, men can face it, and there is evidence of that, and I've seen the survey reports. So yes, I completely accept that, but I don't want to start any answer on these questions with because men face it too, because the numbers actually are very small.
So we'll bring it to a close. Thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure, thank you.
Thank you.